say the name of Jesus. When I'm on my knees, I'ma need to say the name of Jesus. He's all I need. Through the storm and rain, I stand by his name. There ain't no shame in his name. I'ma need to say the name of Jesus. Name of Jesus.
Hello, family and friends and coworkers. Hi, it is Saturday, and I'm back with you for another video. So, hope everyone's doing well. Let's get into the word. Now, I just wanted to kind of recap. On Wednesday, we talked about slaves and we talked about marriage. And one in particular thing that I thought about with marriage during this time, there are still those who practice having more than one wife. And I'm not sure in other countries how that is. But I know in the United States that is not allowed. Also, when we get into the New Testament, it speaks of having one wife. Now, there was a video that I had seen from a gentleman in another country who had 3 wives. And I understood in this video that the ratio for women to men was much higher. So that man felt as though that he could support more than one wife. And, it kind of seemed as though, like, why leave that woman single and unmarried, when he could just marry her and support her. Now, for the woman, I would be a woman of jealousy because I would want just, my husband to be supporting me and loving me. Be the only woman in his life. But if there is women that, don't mind being, the second wife or the third wife, in which they practice, I don't see how that man can give them the same kind of, love equally. It would seems like someone will be neglected of love, of time, and would have to share the finances. But if there was only one woman, it would be more finances. than to share amongst, another wife or another wife. So, that's what it is. And as I remember, it says that, if the man take another wife, that he would still support the first wife. So, but I don't know, I do know, there are some individuals in the Bible where they had, you know, more than one uh, wife, or, took another, individual. Just say that the woman could not have a child, and the man had uh, relations with another woman and made the child, and that wife became jealous. There are testimonies in history about that. And now that we have evolved, they have what is called surrogate mothers. And I think that they just put the man's seed in the uterus. I'm not really sure. But they have surrogate mothers who carry the man's child for the woman who may or may not be able to conceive. So, in this life we live, there are circumstances and situations, and God is aware of it all, and He's giving the right way to carry about and situation, because this, as I mentioned at the beginning of chapter 21, it says judgment. So this is God judging the people and what they're doing, and is telling them the right way that it should be done. If you have a certain situation, this is how you should handle it. Um, if something occurs, this is how you fix it. So some things we may be aware of and practice, and some things we may not be aware of and practice. And I can't speak up on, you know, um, that I have experience with, being married and the husband has two other wives or anything like that. Because for me, um, I have a choice and I choose not to live that life. Um, Honestly, I think that I would rather be single than to have to share a husband. So, you know, that's just me. But let's get into reading more of the word and trying to get some understanding. So let's go back in history. Okay, let's dive into the word. And I think that we stopped in maybe 10, where it talks about another wife. And then we move on to 11, chapter 21, 11. Let's start there. And if he do not these three unto her, then shall she go out free without money. Verse 12, he that smiteth a man and that he die shall be surely put to death. So a man that, that would smite of another man and he dies, he shall be put to death. Verse 13 says that if a man lie not in wait that God delivereth him into his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. So let's stop right there and let's get some understanding of a man who will strike another man and he die. Then that man will be put to death. Okay, so in verse 14 it says if someone schemes to, if someone schemes and slays someone deliberately, that person is to be taken from my altar and put to verse 15. If anyone attacks their father or their mother, is to be put to anyone who kidnaps someone, to be put to whether the victim has been sold or is still in the kidnapper's possession. Anyone who curses father or mother is to be put to. If people quarrel and one person hits another with a stone or with his fist and the victim does not pass but is confined to bed, the one who struck the blow will not be held liable if the other can get up and walk around outside with a staff. However, the guilty party must pay the injured person for any loss of time and see that the victim is completely healed. Okay. So, like accidents happen, but if a person lives through the accident, there are punitive damages that you will need to pay for. So, verse 20 of chapter 21 says, anyone who beats their male or female slave with a rod must be punished if the slave dies as a direct result. And we're gonna say pass because I don't want to use these kind of words with YouTube. So, but they are not to be punished if the slave recovers after a day or two, since the slave is their property. So if the slave doesn't pass, but the slave is injured and recovers, then what does it say? But they are not to be punished. So no punishment will be done. Verse 22, if people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. But if there is a serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for a hand, foot for a foot, burn for a burn, wound for a wound, bruiser for a bruise. And so, it's kind of like where someone may have taken someone's life from them and they, you know, um, go to trial and is sentenced to life behind bars. So that is a life for life. And because that person doesn't get to really, you know, live a life. And in history, it seemed as though that they might have would have stoned them or something. But I do want to go back to slave. I don't think that I read that description. So we're going to go, let me read that description of slavery. Okay, so slavery was practiced widely in the ancient world. A slave might be purchased. It was common to enslave a debtor and his family due to the inability to pay a debt. I kind of think like if you don't pay a debt these days, then it messes with your credit and you will be enslaved to working a lot to pay that debt off. So, back then it was different. We evolved and it's kind of like the same. You still are about to work your butt off. You still will be, you know, like enslaved to working. Some people might work 2 jobs, some people might work 3 jobs to, get their debts paid off, especially when you're dealing with the IRS. You might have to work a couple of jobs to get your debt paid off. So, moving on. Let's see, what does it say? But this practice was forbade by the Mosaic law. So it was forbidden by the Mosaic law for this slavery. A company way of obtaining slaves was the taking of captives of war. So they did make during that time the captives that they took from said countries, that they would make them slaves. Let's see. One might sell himself or a child into slavery. So one might sell himself to slavery, and one might sell a child into slavery. It kind of seems like some of those things are kind of going on still in a way when you think about it. But I won't get into that. I will continue to read these definitions of slave. The Jews had laws to protect the Hebrew slaves. After 6 years of servitude, a slave could have his freedom. And in the year of Jubilee, all Hebrew slaves were released. It seems as though, was it last year? I think it was. There was a Jubilee somewhere. Okay, in the New Testament, neither Jesus nor his apostles commend or denounce the system of slavery in Palestine. The writers of the New Testament enjoin the slaves to be dutiful, conscious service to their masters. The masters of slaves is admonished to recognize the rights and the dignity of the slaves. So there was rules to this, that they were, like governed with the slaves. They had to treat them right with rights and dignity. And so, with anyone who provides a service, there are rules and regulations in place for fair treatment. So we're going to get back to more of the laws and judgments of the people and what they were doing back in history and how things needed to be regulated fairly or justly. Okay, so we are now in verse 26 of chapter 21 of Exodus. And it says, if an owner who hits a male or a female slave in the eye and destroys it must let the slave go free to compensate for the eye. And an owner who knocks out the tooth of a male or female slave must let the slave go free to compensate for the tooth. So, kind of in other words, if he knocks out an eye or a tooth, the right thing would be to let the slave go free to save his own tooth and his eye, because it would be what some people would call karma. It'd come back on them. So, do the right thing. All right. Verse 28. If a bull gores a man or woman to death, the bull is to be stoned to death, and its meat must not be eaten, but the owner of the bull will not be held responsible. If, however, the bull has the habit of goring and the owner has been warned but has not kept it pinned up and it kills a man or a woman, the bull is to be stoned and its owner also is to be put to death. However, If payment is demanded, the owner may redeem his life by the payment of whatever is demanded. This law also applies if the bull gores a son or a daughter, if the bull gores a male or a female slave, the owner must pay 30 shekels or silver to the master of the slave, and the bull is to be stoned to death. When I think about the bull, I think about something that um, occurs, and I actually knew a person that um, had a grandmother who was mauled by a pit bull. And I think in the state, they eventually, because things happen, situation occurs, and laws become implemented. And they change, as we evolve. And these laws I'm reading in Exodus, some of them may be changed as we go along in history and see what happens as um, the people live from one generation to the next. So, but in the situation, I think in that state, they did make it illegal in most part of the states. You can own a pit bull. But so, if you have dogs, especially pit bulls, that are getting out a lot, and it's not like their first time getting out, oh, this not happened before, but if it's happened numerous times, and then little old lady walking down the street with just a stick, because I see a lot of little old ladies walking down the street with, or I would say older ladies, even older men, they're going for a stroll, get some exercise, and then here comes some pit bull that done got out the yard. I've seen it many, many, many times, but I've never seen anyone get mauled. But I knew the guy who it happened to, his grandmother, and there was a petition going around to ban pit bulls, and which they did. And so, you know, if it occurs a lot, then uh, the owner is held liable, you know, and the owner could, probably get, some time and behind bars, or, pay for the damages and save their life from being behind bars. So, it always is a judgment call, which requires court and sitting in front of a judge and having a trial. People that are selected for a jury if it becomes to that level of court. So, anyway, I think that we could go ahead and read these last few verses. Let's see. I'm going to read it out of the NIV. That's where I've been reading from. So let's go to slave and the bull is been stoned to death. Yeah, and then they, even with the pit bulls, they'll put them to sleep. So, and this one said that in the case of the bull, it would be stoned to death. Oh Lord, that was stoning people back then. And so, 33. If anyone uncovers a pit or digs one and fails to cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the one who opened the pit must pay the owner for the loss and take the dead animal in exchange. 35. If anyone bull injures someone else bull and it dies and two parties are to sell the live one and divide both the money and the dead animal equally. However, if it was known that the bull had the habit of goring, yet the owner did not keep it pinned up, the owner must pay animal for animal and take the dead animal in exchange. And so the bull got to another bull and killed the bull, and I think I'm going to use this again, the dogs. Dogs get to another dog and kill the dog, but if a dog has a habit of doing these things, you want to keep that dog pinned up. You want to keep that dog safe and away from other dogs. You want to warn people if that dog is, um, being anger when, you might get close to them and stuff like that. You want to, um, take care of the situation and so that people are safe. But there are also those who have uh, dogs that are entered in dogs fight and they are trained to be vicious killers. And those ones who get out, then, they'll maul anybody, a child, an adult, another dog, and things like that. So, and there are consequences for not keeping your animal pinned up, especially if they are an animal that is very uncontrollable, unruly, and vicious. You want to make sure that you are taking precautions and cautionary when there are people around. So, with that being said, I hope everyone have a blessed night. Continue to read and show thyself approved, and um, leave a comment if you want. Let me know what you're thinking. Um, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Adios.